All right, so today I'm joined with Andrea. She is our education policy expert as well as our legislation efforts liaison. And Andrea, if you could, please introduce yourself to the organization.
Sure. My name is Andrea Cuellar. I am new to the party. I was awakened, if you will. I think at an early age, my dad is a Vietnam veteran and taught me really young to think critically and to always question authority. I'm a school teacher. I'm a special education teacher licensed to work with children with emotional behavior disorders, PTSD, and whatnot. And so I work with, I like to say, rebellious youth. Um, and I enjoyed this job for quite some time. However, it's been pretty alarming in the indoctrination that I've seen over the years. First year of my career and every year after, I've seen it get progressively um, worse. And prior to that, I was a homeschooling mom and a stay-at-home mom, raising six of my wonderful children who are now awesome adults.
Well, I'm excited to have Andrea join our team. And Andrea, I was hoping you could just share some of your thoughts about the education bills, the state of education in Minnesota. And, we talk about indoctrination versus education and some of the policies and bills and even current laws that are on the books and how it impacts education and your thoughts on those, if you could, please.
Sure. So the indoctrination that I've seen has been one of initially, when I started teaching, it was one of creating a victim mindset mentality. That was my first year of teaching. I noticed that it was essential that a lot of our students, now mind you, I work with at-risk students. I work with students that were much like myself. I would have been considered at risk growing up on the border in Del Rio, Texas, and living in San Ysidro and San Diego, California, on border towns. And the socioeconomic level that I was at, I would have been considered highly at risk. And I noticed in my first year of teaching, it was very important that from the top down, that we inculcate students with that victim mindset. And that was something I was not willing to do. So I've hopped around from school to school looking to see where I fit. I used to say early in my career, I'm all for social justice, until I realized what that meant when I worked in Minneapolis and I started an after school program there. And it was during that time at this charter school that I was told to stop engaging in the after school program. And the reason given was we just needed to concentrate on academics. However, I had all the data to support that even our gangbanging students who I signed up to the program and who were coming to the program, their attendance was going up, their efforts in school were going up. The hardcore students were actually starting to discuss the reason for their behavior, and we were creating, I would say, a family of responsible citizens. One of our students interviewed then Mayor Ryback. They were interviewing their community mom and pop stores that they used to steal from, and they were learning about personal responsibility and what that kind of behavior does to their community. And then I was told overnight, 3 months into the program, stop. We had this gentleman from New York fly in, training our school on how to be a top-notch school, and he wanted my program gone. So boom, it was gone. And now he has created other charter schools in Minneapolis that are all social justice mindset driven and coaching out any students who don't fit that narrative and that agenda. I've worked at mainly charter schools, but I've also seen this inculcation happening in our public school traditional sector, in that I've seen the virtue signaling by teachers and the divisiveness that this causes. Johnny still can't read because Johnny's not being taught to read. Johnny's being indoctrinated. And I've found this time and time again at essentially every single school that I've worked at. There's been some form of Marxist training, some form of indoctrination, and some school worse than others. I was driven out of a school for watching a video that the director didn't like, which was a Jordan Peterson video. And
Was
I was
that you showed it to the class? Or
no, there were two students talking, and one of them asked me if I've ever heard of Jordan Peterson. And I just looked over and I said, well, yes, I have. And then they asked if I've seen his videos. And I'm like, well, yes. And then one of them said, I'm very triggered. He's a trans hater and stop talking. And I'm like, excuse, whoa, what's going on? And then the other student said, no, I want to hear what Ms. Cuellar has to say. Ms. Cuellar is a fair person. You're telling me he hates trans people. I want to know if he does or not. I want to know Ms. Cuellar's side. So I explained that he was against Bill C619, if my memory serves correctly, out in Canada. And he was against compelled speech, and that was the argument, and that the left took it way into he hates all trans people. And then the other student said, oh, well, that makes sense. Okay, that doesn't mean that he hates gay people, he said to the other student. And the other student got up and left, went to every classroom where he could find students that would cheer him on in his virtue signaling rant, went to the director, told the director that I hate gay people now, which I do not. And I was called into class and told that I am not to watch those videos. And if I do, I cannot tell anyone that I watched those videos by Jordan Peterson. And then I was asked if I watched Ben Shapiro videos. And I'm like, yes, Dennis Prager. I watch all kinds of videos. What's going on here? Then I was asked if I believe in climate change. And it was at that point where I stopped the conversation and I said, I feel like I need to talk to an attorney about what's going on here right now. And then I submitted my letter of resignation to the board and said that I was going to get an attorney. And then the board chair said, please don't quit, because they knew they didn't want to be sued. Invited me back for a meeting. And at that point, I had already found another job and I just let it go. And I wish I hadn't just let it go, because I keep finding this time and time again. I retired from teaching last school year, and then looking for work in some kind of other field. And then finally I'm like, okay, let's just give it one more go. And I did find two schools that were willing to hire me. I interviewed. One of them I could tell was ultra woke in Crystal and offered me almost six figures. And I turned it down because I knew I'd have to sell my soul if I had to work there. And I wasn't going to do that. And I'd been poor before, so I know what it feels like to go hungry. So I didn't have that mindset of I'm afraid of what it's going to feel like to be hungry. I know what it feels like to be hungry. I also know what it feels like to be enslaved. And so I wasn't going to do that. And I thankfully found a job out in the sticks, I like to say, where they're more constitutionally minded. And I don't have to deal with that kind of inculcation, if you will. So it's been very eye-opening and very sad to watch the decay of our education system, which is based on a Prussian model anyway. So our whole traditional public school system is based on a model to indoctrinate kids to be obedient to authority. So, and our universities are no better. And so when people ask, well, how did this happen? Well, it happened one generation at a time. Slowly, a slow march to tyranny was had by the inculcation of our students. And this all happens at the school level. And they've attacked the family. They've broken up families. They've torn families apart. There's no sacredness to the family unit anymore. And then they get these kids, these troubled youth, and they wonder why they're troubled, because we've bastardized the name family, and then we inculcate them in these public school systems. And that is what I see happening. And I don't see a lot of legislation moving forward. I don't see those that we've elected, the anointed that we've elected to represent we the people. I don't see them having the cojones to go in there and propose bills that would actually effect change, because they're too busy trying to secure their political seats and their political careers and their political ladder climbing. So yeah, the Constitution Party, I don't believe is going to play that game.
We won't.
No.
One of our mottos is that your vote is the currency of your virtue. And at the Constitution Party, we uphold the family unit and the mother and the father being the biological mother and father being the core of what makes a society work as a family. And so you've given us a lot of insight into your experience of having worked in several different education systems, and you've seen this critical race, Marxist theory, victim, oppressor, oppressed model throughout.
Yeah.
Though thankfully you've landed at a place that is more about education than
Right.
indoctrination. We've spoken about the Constitution Party and some of the legislative efforts
Sure.
that we want to find candidates for to
Yes.
author some bills. I was wondering if you could talk about like the vision that you have as the education policy director, and
Sure.
what you want to see and find candidates to run with our policies. Go ahead.
Sure. So I envision giving the local your local leaders the power to decide what they're going to teach at the local level. I don't like, well, it's unconstitutional to have the Department of Education to begin with. That whole system is that whole idea, that whole practice is unconstitutional. States' rights do matter. So I see that in the Minnesota Department of Education needs to be revamped because they're part of the problem, and they are all teaching this religion of wokeness to our children. And so there's actually legislation that we have here in the Constitution Party that I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Darren, that no one else has picked up to go with, and it's the Woke Act. And the Woke Act is the Wrongs to Our Kids and Employees Act. And I would love to see a candidate come through the Constitution Party, or any party for that matter. I want somebody that's going to be brave enough to take this and really go with it. It's relating to public education, grades K through 12, prohibiting the public schools from creating or enforcing policies that directly or symbolically respect the non-secular divisive doctrine of critical race theory pursuant to the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. Yada, yada, yada. It goes on to explain what that is. But essentially, it's stopping the Wrongs to Our Kids and Employees Act, the Stop Woke Act. That needs to happen as well. And I envision our party, and as a director of education policy, really going through and doing what we say we're going to do in terms of teaching Johnny how to read. I always say that, teaching Johnny. But we are not teaching the basic R's: reading, writing, arithmetic. We're not teaching those things to our kids. We're spending way too much time on other issues instead of teaching Johnny how to read. One of the lessons I had in my seminar, I have a class called Seminar in my high school that I work at, and I was talking about the Milgram experiment. And if you don't know what the Milgram experiment is, I encourage people to look up the Milgram experiment of 1965. Dr. Milgram did this experiment on and showed how easy it is to get people to obey authority, even when that authority is telling them to do something evil. And I asked my students, we had class discussion about this, and it was really interesting that they all said, well, people obey because they fear. And then I had another student say, people are taught to just obey without thinking. And then I went on to lecture about the importance of it's not my job to teach you what to think. It's my job to teach you how to think. And I hope every time you leave this classroom, leave any teacher's classroom, that you are questioning their agenda, that you're questioning my agenda, that you're questioning everyone's agenda, because everyone has a why. Everyone has an agenda. My job is to teach you how to think critically, not what to think. And that was a really good lesson. I came home feeling pretty elated about it because they were pretty razzed about it too. So yeah. So I want the Constitution Party's education philosophy to be about really having critical thinking skills in play, and vetting our teachers better than we do. I think that it's based not on merit, but I'm seeing a lot of people of color, people of different sexual ideologies are encouraged to apply. And this is what's hurting our kids is we're not getting, how can I say this better? Would you rather have a doctor that passed his exams with all stars, or would you rather have a doctor that just barely scraped by? I'd rather have the doctor that aced all of his exams. But we're getting teachers based on and what Thomas Sowell would call that affirmative action clause, and instead of merit. And there is merit to merit, because these are people that are with our children most of the day. I mean, our children are in classrooms more than they're with their families for quality time, if you think about it. That's a lot of time with strangers.
Yep.
And so really getting back to the basics of teaching, even changing the model of education. I like to do this experiment with my students every year. And I've done this with all ages. What would your dream school look like? How many hours do you think it really needs to be? I think we need to revamp our entire school system and take it off that Prussian model and really get our students to think about their own individual rights. When I was in school, there was not a lot of group work. It was all individual. And I noticed, because of the Common Core push that happened over a decade ago, there was a lot of group work involved in schools. And that was to create a mass that would believe in collectivism, the group think, not the individual.
I'll tell you what, I remember group activities in high school.
I hated them. I remember
the pep talks of the people in my team. Okay, now Darren, you're going to take care of this, right? You're going to get it as an A, right?
There's always one that carries the group. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember those conversations in science and whatever thing we were doing. Like, well, we know Darren's going to get us an A.
Yeah.
So in gym class, they don't want to pick me, but in classes, they want me.
Exactly.
And then grading on a curve. I mean, this is a little bit off top.
No, it's okay.
But grading on a curve, like we didn't do that in my school. And when I got to college, the professors were grading on curves, and so there's this thing where you could throw the curve if you got an A.
Yeah, you can't
be
that.
Mad.
You can't be that outlier. You cannot be that outlier. Yeah.
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 And I remember fearing my classmates for getting A's. I'm like, guys, do you honestly expect me to do worse?
Yep. Yeah.
Like, you want me to dumb it down so that you get an A?
Exactly. Yeah, I like to. Everything in my world reverts back to basketball, because I used to play basketball in elementary through some of high school, and I remember getting chastised by one of my new team members, and she's like, "It's just practice. You don't have to try so hard." And so I'm like, it's that group. You have to go with the collective group mindset. Yeah, yeah. But we've taken our children away from thinking of themselves as their own individual self, and we've put them into boxes of what group do you fit in? And we already self-segregate as a species to begin with, but schools have made that compounded and exponentially worse with the various agendas, these woke agendas that they have, in getting students to look for the next popular trend that's happening in the woke ideology, the religion of wokeness. It's no longer about being your best self. It's being in the best group that's going to give you the most social currency, the most virtue signaling points.
Yeah. So I want to transition from our education conversation to the Constitution Party structure. And as a Constitution Party structure, we have you as a congressional district chair and a county chair. And I was wondering if you could talk about your vision for your district and your county. And as we find people that join the Constitution Party, in Sherburne County and in your district, I want them to get to know you. So go ahead and just.
Yeah. So this summer, and I worked on this, and I was going to start it, and I worked on this with a community action group, and then egos tend to get involved, and again, it's not. Long story short, I decided to take this and run with it, and do this myself. But I've sat on it, waiting for the right time. So being that my kids are grown, they're out of the house. Well, I've got two adults at home, but they're barely here. And I've secured a job. So I'm feeling like, okay, things are in place now. Summer's coming up. I would love to start using my time this summer to have a monthly group meeting for the Constitution education, and it would be parents and their students. And I would like to read my mission and vision, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, parents and their kids.
Parents and their children. Yes, and their kids. Yes.
The teacher, parents and their students.
Sorry, did I say that? Oh
yeah,
my goodness.
And, but you know what? We homeschool, so they are our students.
Yes, that's true. Okay.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate for the people who are watching is that Andrea is chair of CD6, Congressional District 6, and then also chair of Sherburne County. Yes. And so go ahead, Andrea, share your vision for what you're doing.
So I'd like to have a place where parents and their children could come and learn more about the Constitution and really empower. And so I came up with a vision and a mission statement for this. And I thank you for indulging me on this. So the mission is this group exists to inspire individual responsibility and collaboratively strive to unite our community, to uphold our sovereignty and cultivate a loving community that respects the individual. Vision. We are a group that seeks truth, education, and community service opportunities in order to protect our individualism while protecting our community from ideology that discriminates against the minority of one, the individual.
Right.
So questions would be like, what do we do? Who do we serve? We serve our community members. We educate on the Constitution, on our rights. I have been astounded to talk to adults and to talk to youth in my community that are unaware of their rights, and they're unaware that what's been going on in the world stage today in our own country has been complete a regime takeover of monumental proportions, in that our rights have been violated, as well as I've been surprised to learn that many people believe our rights come from the Constitution, and the Constitution Party itself rightly believes that our rights come from our God. Our rights come from our Maker, our Creator, and the Constitution was written and inspired by men that were inspired by our Creator to create a land of the free, home of the brave, to give that liberty a place to flourish, and we've been blindsided, and slowly our rights have been taken away, and we have not realized that we've grown up in an enslaved system over time. It's a slow march to tyranny, as they say.
And I'm as party chair, I'm really excited to have Andrea run with this education, because that's a big part. Our executive council, one of our main goals in the party is education and making people aware of our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution and the principles behind the founding of our country and those documents, and understanding what the blessings of liberty means. And Andrea hit on a good point that we emphasize frequently, is that we have inalienable rights from our Creator. And when you give up honoring our Creator or going against natural law and nature's law, nature's God, you end up in licentiousness. Yes. And our founding fathers spoke about the warning us to protect our freedoms, that the Constitution and the principles, that the paperwork that was made turns into just a bunch of checks and balances if you don't believe in a Creator and in nature's laws. It's just an archaic system of checks and balances. And Andrea is going to bring a lot of strength to the party in teaching the Constitution, but also being in the education area and having the insights of how our students or our children are not being taught the principles of where our rights come from. They're being taught that the government is there to provide, the government is there to protect and to give. But that's not the point of the government as it was founded. It was there to protect our inalienable rights and punish evil, and that was it. Yep. It wasn't meant to be a welfare state and distribution of labor, or of wealth rather, from labor. And so, Andrea, I want to thank you for this interview, for being part of the Constitution Party.
Thank you.
And I look forward to all the efforts that we're going to be working together to grow the party.
Thank you.
Happy Easter and God bless.
God bless. Thanks.